You are sitting in your car in the parking lot of a job you once prayed for, and your hands will not move from the steering wheel. The engine is running, the dashboard clock is ticking forward, and you are 10 minutes late, but your body has locked itself in place as if the seatbelt is the only thing holding your skeleton together. Somewhere inside your chest, a war is being fought between a part of you that wants to run and a part of you that wants to fight, and the terrifying truth is you do not know which one is winning. You have been told your entire life that you are in control, that you are the captain of your own ship, the architect of your own destiny, but right now you cannot even make your fingers uncurl from the leather-wrapped wheel. This is not a failure of willpower. This is not laziness. This is not a character flaw. This is a collision between the life you built and the life your deepest instincts are screaming for. You have spent years burying the voice that tells you what you really want, burying it under spreadsheets and mortgage payments and LinkedIn updates and polite smiles at parties where you feel completely invisible. And now that voice has stopped whispering and started roaring. The instinct theory of motivation is not some dusty academic concept from a psychology textbook you half remember from university. It is the raw, biological, evolutionary force that is pinning you to that car seat right now, demanding that you pay attention to what your entire nervous system already knows. Instincts are not just urges. They are pre-wired survival programs that have kept the human species alive for 200,000 years, and they do not care about your 5-year plan. They do not care about your quarterly performance review. They care about whether you are moving toward safety, toward belonging, toward purpose, toward a life that actually feels like yours. And if you are not, they will sabotage everything you have built until you finally listen. The smell of stale coffee in the cup holder mixes with the faint scent of the pine tree air freshener you hung there 6 months ago and never noticed anymore. That is the thing about instincts. They notice everything. They catalog every scent, every micro-expression, every subtle shift in tone, every pattern your conscious mind dismisses as irrelevant. Right now, your ancient brain is processing a flood of information that your modern mind has been trained to ignore. It knows that the dread you feel walking through the office doors is not just stress. It is a signal. It knows that the tightness in your throat during team meetings is not just social anxiety. It is your threat detection system firing on all cylinders, warning you that you are in an environment that does not value your survival. Instincts are not irrational. They are the accumulated wisdom of every ancestor who survived long enough to pass their genes on to you, and they are speaking to you in the only language they have: a racing heart, a hollow stomach, a sudden, inexplicable certainty that you cannot take one more step in this direction without losing something essential about yourself. You have been taught to override these signals, to push through, to treat your body like a machine that should simply comply with your will. But your body is not a machine. It is a survival instrument honed by millennia of evolution, and it knows things your thinking brain has not yet admitted. The instinct theory of motivation states that we are born with innate tendencies that drive our behavior. William James, the father of American psychology, argued that humans possess a vast array of instincts including fear, love, sociability, sympathy, and curiosity. William McDougall expanded this to 18 distinct instincts that he believed powered all human behavior. And while modern psychology has moved toward more nuanced models, the foundational truth remains. There is something inside you that knows what you need before your rational mind can articulate it. That something is speaking right now. The question is whether you have the courage to listen. The office building looms through the windshield, all glass and steel and reflective surfaces that show you a distorted version of yourself, warped and stretched and somehow smaller than you remember being when you started this job 3 years ago. Your phone buzzes in the cup holder. A message from your manager. Running late. No pressure, just make sure you're prepped for the 10 a.m. You stare at the words and feel something ancient and wordless rise up through your chest. It is not anger exactly. It is something more primal. It is the same force that makes a wolf pace the perimeter of a cage. It is the same impulse that makes a migratory bird beat its wings against glass. It is the recognition, deep in your cells, that you are not where you are supposed to be. Instincts do not speak in full sentences. They do not present PowerPoint slides with logical arguments for why you should change your life. They speak in restlessness, in sleepless nights, in the sudden, unshakable feeling that you are living someone else's life while yours waits for you somewhere you are too afraid to go. The instinct theory reminds us that motivation is not always a conscious choice. Often, it is a biological imperative that bypasses the thinking brain entirely. A baby does not decide to cry when it is hungry. It simply cries. A sea turtle does not decide to crawl toward the ocean the moment it hatches. It simply moves. You are not so different. Beneath the layers of education and socialization and carefully constructed identity, there is a creature who knows what it needs. And that creature is currently refusing to get out of the car because getting out of the car means betraying itself for another 8 hours of fluorescent lights and passive-aggressive emails and the slow erosion of everything that once made you feel alive. Think back to the last time you felt completely, undeniably alive. Not happy, not comfortable, alive. The moment when time seemed to stretch and your senses sharpened, and you were so fully present that the past and future simply ceased to exist. Maybe it was on a mountain trail when the altitude made your lungs burn and your legs shake, and you kept going anyway because something inside you needed to reach the summit. Maybe it was in a conversation that lasted until 4 in the morning, the kind where truth spills out unbidden, and you discover parts of yourself you never knew existed. Maybe it was in the first weeks of a new love when every glance felt electric and every touch was a revelation. That was instinct. That was your deepest self, momentarily freed from the cage of should and supposed to and what will people think. That version of you is not gone. It is buried. It is waiting. And it has been trying to get your attention for years. The problem is not that you lack motivation. The problem is that your conscious goals have become completely disconnected from your instinctual drives. You are trying to motivate yourself to climb a ladder that is leaning against the wrong wall, and your entire being is screaming in protest. This is why willpower fails. This is why discipline breaks. This is why you can read every productivity book ever written and still find yourself paralyzed in a parking lot at 8:47 on a Tuesday morning. You are fighting your own nature. And nature always wins. The instinct theory of motivation is not just an explanation for why we do what we do. It is an invitation to align your life with the deepest currents of your being. It is a permission slip to stop treating yourself like a problem to be solved and start treating yourself like a creature to be understood. And understanding begins with listening to the very signals you have spent a lifetime learning to ignore. The taste of lukewarm coffee hits your tongue as you mechanically lift the cup from the holder, and the bitterness is almost comforting. At least it is real. At least it is something your body can feel in a life that has become increasingly abstract, mediated through screens and spreadsheets and carefully worded emails that say nothing about what anyone is actually feeling. Your body is not interested in abstractions. It is interested in survival. And survival, from an evolutionary perspective, is not just about not dying. It is about thriving in the specific environment for which you were designed. The human animal evolved over hundreds of thousands of years in small groups, living close to nature, responding to immediate threats and immediate rewards, deeply connected to the physical world and to each other. You now spend your days in a sealed building, staring at artificial light, responding to manufactured urgency about things that will not matter in 5 years, let alone 5 generations. Your instincts are not broken. They are simply in the wrong environment, and they are screaming. The exhaustion you feel is not just physical. It is the exhaustion of a creature forced to constantly override its own nature. The anxiety is not just psychological. It is the threat response of an animal that cannot find solid ground. The depression is not just chemical. It is the collapse of a system that has been running on false signals for too long. When you understand the instinct theory of motivation, you stop pathologizing your pain and start listening to it. You stop asking, "What is wrong with me?" and start asking, "What is my pain trying to tell me?" That question changes everything. It turns your suffering from an enemy to be defeated into a messenger to be heard. And the message right now is that you are not just tired. You are misaligned. You are not just stressed. You are starved for the conditions your psyche needs to function. And you are not just stuck. You are waiting for permission that will never come from outside you. Say this out loud. My instincts are not my enemy. They are my oldest and wisest guide. I will learn to listen to what my body already knows. Intelligence beneath the surface there is a form of intelligence that does not speak in words and does not think in logical sequences and does not care about your carefully constructed arguments for why you should stay in the job or the relationship or the city or the life that is slowly hollowing you out. This intelligence is older than language, older than conscious thought, older than the human species itself. It is the intelligence that tells a salmon to swim thousands of miles back to the exact stream where it was born. It is the intelligence that tells a caterpillar when to spin its cocoon and when to break free. It is the intelligence that tells a newborn to seek the breast, that tells your heart to beat without instruction, that tells your lungs to draw breath while you are sleeping. This intelligence lives in you. It has always lived in you, and it has been trying to communicate with you through every restless night, every inexplicable sadness, every sudden surge of energy towards something you cannot logically justify. Instinct is not the absence of intelligence. It is intelligence in its most ancient and compressed form. It is the evolutionary wisdom of 200,000 years of human survival, distilled into impulses so fast and so powerful that they bypass the neocortex entirely. When you feel the urge to leave, there is a reason. When you feel drawn toward a particular person or place or pursuit, there is a reason. When your body refuses to cooperate with your conscious will, there is a reason. And the reason is not weakness. The reason is wisdom. You have been taught to override this wisdom, to treat it as primitive noise to be suppressed by the higher functions of your rational mind. But your rational mind is a relatively recent addition to your neural architecture. It is powerful but slow, analytical but limited, capable of processing only a fraction of the information your older brain structures handle in every moment. By the time your conscious mind has formed a thought about a situation, your instinctual brain has already processed thousands of subtle cues and reached a conclusion your rational mind has not even begun to consider. To ignore this is not rationality, it is arrogance. It is the arrogance of a ship captain who refuses to listen to the lookout because the lookout cannot speak in navigational terminology. The lookout sees the iceberg. The lookout feels the shift in the wind. The lookout knows things the captain cannot see from the wheel. And right now, your lookout is screaming. The tension in your shoulders as you finally force yourself out of the car and walk toward the building is not random. It is not a muscle spasm. It is not the result of sleeping in a weird position. It is your body bracing for an environment it perceives as threatening. Your trapezius muscles are contracting in a protective response that evolved to shield your vulnerable neck from predators. Your jaw is clenching because your threat detection system has identified something in your environment that requires vigilance. You are not imagining these sensations. They are real physiological responses to a real assessment your deeper brain has made. The modern workplace is not a savanna with saber-toothed cats lurking behind the water cooler, but your nervous system does not make that distinction. It evaluates threat based on patterns of social exclusion, unpredictable reward, loss of autonomy, lack of purpose, absence of connection. And by those criteria, your open-plan office with its hot desking and its constant surveillance and its performance reviews that can end your livelihood with 2 weeks' notice is a very dangerous place indeed. No wonder your body does not want to go in. No wonder your instincts are screaming. You are not broken. You are responding appropriately to an environment that is deeply misaligned with your evolutionary needs. The instinct theory of motivation tells us that what we call motivation is often simply the natural expression of our innate drives in an environment that allows those drives to flourish. When motivation dies, it is not because you have lost something. It is because your environment has blocked the natural channels through which your instinctual energy flows. You are not unmotivated. You are damned. The river is still there. The water is still trying to move, but something is blocking its path, and the pressure that is building up behind that dam is not laziness. It is the accumulated force of your own denied nature. Think about a dog that has been kept in a crate too long. When the door finally opens, it does not need a motivational speech to run. It does not need an accountability partner. It does not need a morning routine or a vision board. It runs because running is what dogs do. It sniffs because sniffing is what dogs do. It explores and investigates and engages with the world because those instincts live inside it and will express themselves the moment the obstacle is removed. You are not so different. The vitality you seek is not something you must manufacture through discipline and willpower. It is something you already possess, something that is straining against the bars of the life you have constructed around yourself. The question is not how to become motivated. The question is what is blocking your natural motivation from expressing itself. What cages have you accepted as permanent? What walls have you stopped noticing because they have been there so long? Your instincts have not abandoned you. They are buried under layers of obligation and expectation and fear, but they are still there, still active, still sending signals you the environment that shapes you, the environment around you is not neutral. It is either feeding your instincts or starving them. Every color, every sound, every texture, every spatial arrangement is sending signals to your deeper brain about whether you are safe, whether you belong, whether you can relax or must remain vigilant. And you absorb these signals whether you are conscious of them or not. The gray fabric of your cubicle wall is not just a gray fabric. It is a sensory deprivation field that tells your visual system there is nothing worth seeing here. The fluorescent light that flickers at a frequency just below conscious perception is not just illumination. It is a stressor that keeps your nervous system in a state of low-grade activation all day. The open-plan layout that subjects you to the constant noise of other people's phone calls and typing and sniffing and sighing is not just an architectural choice. It is an assault on your attentional system that forces your brain to constantly filter out irrelevant stimuli, draining your cognitive resources and leaving you mentally exhausted by noon. You have been told that this is just how offices are. You have been told to adapt, but adapt to what? Adapt to an environment that would be considered a violation of human rights if you were a laboratory animal. Research facilities are required to provide enrichment for their subjects, appropriate lighting, appropriate space, appropriate social groupings. They are required to consider the instinctual needs of the creatures in their care, but no one is required to consider your instinctual needs. No one is measuring the cortisol in your saliva at the end of the workday. No one is tracking the long-term health effects of the chronic low-grade stress your environment imposes on you. And so it falls to you to become conscious of what your environment is doing to you, and to take responsibility for changing what you can change. This is not about blaming the office. This is about recognizing that your motivational struggles are not purely internal. They are a response to external conditions that are actively hostile to human flourishing. And while you cannot always change the external conditions immediately, you can change how you relate to them. You can understand why you feel the way you feel. You can stop judging yourself for having normal human responses to abnormal human environments. And you can begin to make small, strategic changes that signal safety to your nervous system, even when the larger environment remains challenging. Look at your home, not with the eyes of an interior designer, not with the eyes of someone worried about what guests will think. Look at your home with the eyes of an animal seeking shelter. Is it a refuge, or is it just another source of stress? Is there anywhere in your living space where you can see the horizon? Is there anywhere where you can put your back against a wall and know that nothing can approach you from behind? These are not trivial aesthetic questions. These are the questions your limbic system is asking every moment of every day. Humans evolved in landscapes with distant views, with clear sightlines, with the ability to scan for both threats and opportunities. When you live in a space with no natural light, no views beyond the next wall, no sense of the weather or the time of day, your orientation system is constantly starved for the information it needs to establish safety. This contributes to the background anxiety you cannot quite explain, the restlessness that makes you scroll through your phone instead of sleeping, the feeling of being simultaneously overstimulated and deeply bored. Your environment is either feeding your instinctual needs or depleting them. And most modern environments are depleting. They deplete your need for nature, what biologists call biophilia. They deplete your need for darkness and silence, and the natural rhythms of light that regulate your circadian system. They deplete your need for spaces that feel like territory, spaces you can control and modify and make your own. When these needs are chronically unmet, your motivation suffers. It suffers not because you are lazy, but because your brain is diverting resources to basic survival functions that should be handled automatically in an appropriate environment. You are trying to run complex cognitive software on a brain that is stuck in low-power survival mode because the environment keeps signaling that things are not okay. Fix the environment and the motivation often fixes itself. The instinct theory of motivation has profound implications for how we design our lives. It suggests that willpower is overrated and environment is underrated. It suggests that the most effective way to change your behavior is not to try harder, but to create conditions that make the desired behavior natural and the undesired behavior difficult. It suggests that you are not fighting yourself. You are fighting an environment that is mismatched with your nature. Consider the instinct for territory. In the animal kingdom, territory is not optional. It is essential for survival. An animal with no territory has no secure base from which to hunt or forage, no safe place to rest, no protected area in which to raise young. The drive to establish and defend territory is one of the most powerful instincts in nature. And you have this instinct too. You experience it as the need for personal space, for a home that feels like yours, for a workspace you can control, for boundaries that others cannot cross without your permission. When this instinct is frustrated, you feel agitated, defensive, exhausted. You feel it on the subway when someone stands too close. You feel it in the open-plan office where your desk can be occupied by anyone on any given day. You feel it when your boss enters your workspace without acknowledgement, treating your territory as an extension of their own. The violation of territorial instinct is a constant, low-grade stressor that most modern humans simply accept as normal. But it is not normal. It is a chronic activation of a threat response that should only activate in actual emergencies. And every time it activates, it costs you energy. Energy that could have gone toward creativity, toward connection, toward the work that actually matters. The instinct theory tells us that we cannot eliminate these drives. We can only work with them or against them. Working with them means creating territories, even small ones, that your deeper brain can recognize as safe. A desk that is yours, with objects you chose and arranged. A corner of a room where no one can approach you from behind. A morning routine that establishes your sovereignty over the first hour of your day. These small territorial markers send powerful signals to your nervous system. They tell the ancient parts of your brain that you have a base, a refuge, a place from which to operate. And from that place of safety, motivation flows much more easily than from a place of chronic territorial violation. The hunger you feel at 3 p.m. is not just a need for calories. It is your instinctual foraging drive, misdirected in an environment of food abundance. For most of human history, finding food required movement, problem-solving, social cooperation, and the navigation of variable reward schedules. The seeking itself was rewarding. The dopamine system that drives motivation evolved primarily to reward the search, not just the find. The anticipation of food, the tracking, the gathering, the return to the group with resources to share, this was the work that made us human. And you still have that foraging instinct. It expresses itself as curiosity, as the urge to explore, as the satisfaction of finding something valuable in unexpected places. But in your current environment, this powerful drive has been reduced to walking to the break room and pulling something from a vending machine. There is no search. There is no variable reward. There is no skill involved. There is no social value created. The instinct fires but finds no meaningful expression, so it fires again. and you find yourself eating not because you are hungry, but because your brain is trying to satisfy a foraging drive that has no appropriate outlet. This is why boredom eating happens. This is why you crave novelty in your food even when you are physically full. This is why the act of cooking can be so satisfying even when you are not particularly hungry. Cooking is foraging behavior. It engages the search, the transformation, the anticipation. It satisfies something that a prepackaged meal never can. The instinct theory of motivation illuminates these patterns and removes the shame from them. You are not weak. You are not gluttonous. You are a creature with ancient drives that are trying to find expression in a world that has removed almost all the natural outlets for those drives. The solution is not to suppress the drive. The solution is to give it a healthier channel, to engage in real exploration, to seek novelty in learning rather than in consumption, to turn the foraging instinct toward ideas, toward connections, toward experiences that actually nourish you. The drive is not the problem. The misdirection of the drive is the problem, and you can redirect it once you understand what it is and why it exists. There is a reason you feel restless when you sit still for too long. Your body was designed to move. Not to exercise in the modern sense, not to perform repetitive motions on machines in a gym, but to walk, to climb, to carry, to throw, to crouch, to stretch. Movement was constant and varied and integrated into the fabric of daily survival. The instinct for movement is not separate from the instinct for thought. They evolve together. The brain developed in a moving body, and it functions best when the body is moving. The restlessness you feel at your desk is not a sign that you lack discipline. It is a sign that your body is demanding what it evolved to expect. When you suppress that demand with caffeine and willpower, you are fighting 1 billion years of evolutionary history, and you lose that fight every single day. The cost is paid in attention, in creativity, in mood, in the quality of your thinking. You are trying to do cognitive work with a brain that is being starved of the movement inputs it needs to regulate arousal, to process emotion, to integrate information. The instinct theory reminds us that motivation and movement are linked. The word emotion comes from the Latin mover, to move. Emotions are action tendencies. They are impulses to move in particular ways. Fear is an impulse to flee. Anger is an impulse to fight. Joy is an impulse to expand and approach. When you suppress the movement, you suppress the emotion. And when you suppress the emotion, you suppress the motivational energy that drives all action. You end up flat, numb, stuck. The path back to motivation often begins with the body, not with affirmations, not with goal setting, with movement, with letting the animal inside you express what it needs to express. Whether that is a walk, a stretch, a dance, a run, the specific form matters less than the permission to move. Your ancestors did not need motivational speakers to get them moving. Movement was life, and it still is. Walk outside for a moment. If you can, do it now. If you are reading this in a moment when you can step away, put this down and walk outside for 60 seconds. Feel the air on your skin. Look at the sky. Notice the quality of the light. Notice the temperature. Notice the scents. This is not a break from your life. This is a return to the conditions your brain was designed for. Your sensory systems are starving for the natural world. The biophilia hypothesis proposed by E.O. Wilson suggests that humans have an innate tendency to seek connections with nature and other forms of life. This is not a preference. It is an instinct. And when it is denied, your mental health suffers in measurable ways. Studies consistently show that time in nature reduces cortisol, improves mood, enhances cognitive function, and boosts immune activity. You do not need a forest. You do not need a mountain. You need a sky. You need a tree. You need something that is not made by humans. Something that reminds your deeper brain that the world is larger than the cubicle, larger than the spreadsheet, larger than the deadline that feels so urgent right now. The instinct theory of motivation suggests that reconnecting with nature is not a luxury. It is a biological necessity. It is one of the most efficient ways to reset your nervous system, to remind your body what baseline safety feels like, to restore the energy that has been drained by an artificial environment. You are not escaping your problems by walking outside. You are equipping yourself to face them with a nervous system that is no longer in emergency mode. Say this out loud. My environment shapes my motivation. I will create spaces that nourish my instincts rather than fight them. The reward trap and the dopamine deception, the most dangerous lie you have been told about motivation is that it is driven by reward. That if you just want the outcome badly enough, if you just visualize the success vividly enough, if you just attach enough pleasure to the goal and enough pain to the failure, you will finally take action. This sounds reasonable. It aligns with a simplistic understanding of how the brain works. Dopamine is the reward molecule. Dopamine drives motivation. Therefore, maximize reward and you maximize motivation. But this is not how dopamine works. This is not how motivation works. And believing this lie is a significant part of why you feel so stuck. Dopamine is not a reward chemical. Dopamine is a desire chemical. It is not released when you get what you want. It is released when you anticipate getting what you want. It is the molecule of pursuit, not possession. The greatest surge of dopamine happens not at the moment of achievement, but in the moments before, when the outcome is uncertain and the possibility is alive. This is why anticipation is often more pleasurable than the actual experience. This is why you can want something desperately and then feel hollow when you finally get it. The dopamine system evolved to keep you seeking, not to reward you for finding. A satisfied animal is a dead animal. The animal that stops seeking when it finds food will starve when the food runs out. The animal that continues to seek, that remains curious, that explores beyond the known, that is the animal that survives. Your dopamine system is not designed to make you happy. It is designed to keep you in motion. And when you understand this, the entire architecture of modern motivational thinking collapses. The promise of reward is not what drives sustained action. What drives sustained action is the process of pursuit itself, when the pursuit is aligned with your instinctual nature. The work that feels effortless is not the work that promises the biggest reward. It is the work that engages your deepest drives in the present moment. It is the work where the doing itself releases dopamine, where the challenge itself is the reward, where you are not pushing toward a distant goal but are pulled by the intrinsic satisfaction of the activity. This is what Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi called flow. And flow is not something you achieve by wanting the outcome more. Flow is something you enter when the activity matches your capacities, when the feedback is immediate, when you lose yourself in the process. The instinct theory of motivation explains why some activities produce flow and others produce only drudgery. Activities that engage our evolved instincts produce intrinsic motivation. Activities that ignore or violate our evolved instincts require external motivation. And external motivation is always fragile. It collapses the moment the reward is removed, or the punishment is avoided, or the surveillance is lifted. You have been trying to motivate yourself with rewards and punishments for years. How is that working for you? The dopamine system in your brain has been hijacked. Not by you. By people who understand this science better than most psychologists and who use it to capture your attention and hold it for profit. Every notification on your phone is a dopamine trigger. Every social media refresh offers the variable reward schedule that is most effective at conditioning compulsive behavior. Every autoplay feature that starts the next episode before you can decide is exploiting a brain that evolved to orient toward novelty. You are not weak for struggling with these technologies. You are up against billions of dollars of engineering designed specifically to exploit your instinctual drives. The infinite scroll exploits your foraging instinct, the promise of endless novelty just a finger flick away. The social validation of likes and comments exploits your tribal belonging instinct, making your social standing quantifiable and constantly uncertain. The algorithm that shows you content designed to outrage exploits your threat detection instinct, keeping you engaged through anger and fear long after the information value has been exhausted. You are not addicted to your phone because you lack discipline. You are addicted because your phone is a supernormal stimulus, a term biologists use for artificial stimuli that trigger instinctual responses more powerfully than the natural stimuli those instincts evolved for. A supernormal stimulus is an egg that is larger and more brightly colored than any real egg, and the bird will abandon its own eggs to sit on the fake one. Your phone is the supernormal egg. It is more novel than anything in the natural world, more socially validating, more threatening, more sexually stimulating, more information-rich. And your instincts, which evolved to respond to natural stimuli in natural proportions, are completely overwhelmed. You cannot willpower your way out of a supernormal stimulus. You can only recognize the mismatch between your ancient brain and the modern technology, and then make structural changes to your environment that limit your exposure. This is not about willpower. This is about respect for the power of your own biology. The instinct theory of motivation explains why these technologies are so compelling, and that explanation is the first step toward reclaiming your attention and your motivation from those who are extracting it for their own purposes. The strange, hollow feeling you get after hours of scrolling is worth examining. It is not rest. It is not relaxation. It is a drained, depleted state that leaves you less capable of action than you were before. This is because your dopamine system has been exhausted but not satisfied. It has been triggered repeatedly by the promise of reward, but the rewards themselves have been empty. Each notification, each like, each novel piece of content triggers a small dopamine release, but the content itself rarely provides genuine satisfaction. It does not feed your instinctual needs for deep connection, for meaningful work, for physical movement, for time in nature. It offers the anticipation without the fulfillment. And your brain, confused by this pattern, continues to seek while receiving no nourishment. This is the dopamine deception, the promise of reward without the substance, the anticipation without the arrival, the motivation without the meaning. You end up feeling simultaneously overstimulated and empty, desperate for more stimulation, while being completely unmotivated to do anything that actually matters. This state is not a personal failure. It is the predictable result of exposing ancient neural circuitry to modern technology without any protection or limitation. Understanding this, truly understanding it at a biological level, changes how you approach your own attention. You stop asking, "Why am I so undisciplined?" and start asking, "How do I protect my dopamine system from hijacking?" You start treating your attention as the precious, finite resource it is. You start creating barriers between your instincts and the technologies that exploit them. You start reclaiming the motivational energy that has been siphoned away by screens. And gradually, you find that your natural curiosity, your natural drive to explore and create and connect, returns. It was never gone. It was just being wasted on counterfeit rewards. Consider the instinct for mastery. Across every human culture, in every era of history, people have sought to develop skills, to improve their capacities, to become more competent in domains that matter to them. This drive is not purely practical. It is not just about securing more resources. It is intrinsic. Children do not need to be bribed to learn to walk or talk. They pursue these abilities with relentless determination because the drive for mastery is built into the architecture of the brain. The process of skill development, the experience of getting better at something that matters, releases dopamine in a pattern that supports sustained effort. This is the opposite of the hollow dopamine hit from a notification. This is the deep satisfaction of competence growing. It requires genuine challenge. It requires feedback that is real rather than manufactured. It requires effort over time. When your life lacks opportunities for genuine mastery, your instinctual drive for competence is starved. You may be performing complex tasks at work, but if those tasks do not stretch your capacities, if they do not offer clear feedback on improvement, if they do not connect to something you genuinely value, they will not satisfy the mastery instinct. You will feel restless, bored, unmotivated, even if you are objectively successful. This is why hobbies matter. This is why side projects matter. This is why the pursuit of skills that have no economic value can be profoundly energizing. They feed an instinct that your paid work may be starving. The instinct theory of motivation suggests that you need to identify the domains where your mastery drive can express itself, and you need to protect time for those domains. Not as a luxury, not as a reward for getting your real work done, but as a biological necessity for a motivated life. When you are growing in something that matters to you, the motivation spills over into everything else. When you are stagnant in everything that matters to you, no amount of external reward can compensate for the deadness inside. Let me describe what happens in your brain when you pursue a goal that aligns with your instincts versus one that conflicts with them. When you pursue an instinct-aligned goal, the dopamine release that accompanies pursuit is coupled with a sense of rightness, of fit, of this is what I am supposed to be doing. The action feels less effortful because the neural pathways involved are well supported by older brain structures that have been reinforcing similar behaviors for millions of years. The obstacles you encounter do not feel like signs that you should stop. They feel like challenges to be overcome, which triggers additional dopamine in the anticipation of solving the problem. The progress you make, even small progress, feels meaningful because it is connected to deep values encoded in your biology. You can work for hours and feel energized rather than depleted. This is not magic. This is neurochemistry aligning with evolutionary design. When you pursue a goal that conflicts with your instincts, the opposite happens. Every step requires conscious override of signals from your deeper brain telling you this is wrong. The dopamine release is blunted because the pursuit does not connect to your instinctual reward pathways. The obstacles feel like confirmations that you should stop. The progress feels hollow because it is disconnected from what your body recognizes as valuable. You are exhausted after an hour because you have been fighting yourself the entire time. This is the biological reality behind the common experience of some work feeling effortless and other work feeling impossible. It is not about the objective difficulty of the task. It is about the alignment between the task and your instinctual nature. The instinct theory of motivation provides a framework for understanding which goals will energize you and which will deplete you. And it strongly suggests that the most important work you can do is not to force yourself toward goals that leave you drained, but to identify the goals that align with your deepest drives. Think about the last time you were so engaged in something that you lost track of time completely. That experience is called flow, and it is the state where your instincts and your activity are in perfect alignment. The challenge matches your skill. The feedback is immediate. The goal is clear. The sense of self dissolves. Time distorts, and action feels effortless even when it is objectively demanding. Flow is not just a pleasant experience. It is a peak state of human functioning. It is when we are at our most creative, our most productive, our most fully alive. And flow cannot be forced. It can only be invited by creating the conditions that allow it to emerge. Those conditions happen to be the conditions that satisfy our deepest instinctual drives. The drive for competence, satisfied by the balance of challenge and skill. The drive for autonomy, satisfied by the sense of control over the activity. The drive for purpose, satisfied by the clear goal and immediate feedback on progress. When your life lacks flow, it is not because you are incapable of it. It is because your daily activities are structured in ways that systematically block the conditions for flow. The constant interruptions of modern work destroy the focus that flow requires. The meaningless metrics that substitute for genuine feedback destroy the connection between effort and result that flow demands. The surveillance and micromanagement destroy the autonomy that flow depends on. You are not broken. Your work environment is structurally anti-flow. And flow is not optional. It is a fundamental human need. The instinct theory of motivation elevates flow from a nice-to-have peak experience to a biological necessity for psychological health. When you do not experience flow regularly, your motivation atrophies, your creativity withers, your sense of meaning erodes, you become a shell of what you could be. And the path back is not through more effort but through more alignment. Through restructuring your activities so they engage your instincts rather than suppress them. Say this out loud. I will pursue alignment, not just achievement. I will seek the work that makes me feel alive. While I do it, the social instinct and the courage to disconnect you have carried certain relationships with you for years, not because they nourish you, but because the instinct to maintain social bonds is so powerful that breaking them feels like a threat to your survival. And in some ancient part of your brain, it feels that way precisely because, for most of human history, it was. Losing your place in the group meant losing access to shared resources, shared protection, shared knowledge. It meant facing the predators and the elements alone. Your brain does not easily distinguish between leaving a friendship that drains you and being exiled from the tribe. The same neural alarm bells ring in both cases. This is why you stay in toxic relationships. This is why you maintain connections with people who diminish you. This is why you continue to show up for gatherings that leave you feeling more alone than if you had stayed home. You are not weak. You are not a people pleaser by choice. You are a social mammal whose brain interprets social rejection as a threat to existence. And until you understand this, you will continue to judge yourself harshly for behavior that is entirely natural. The instinct theory of motivation gives you a different lens. It says that your drive to belong is real, is powerful, and needs to be honored. But it also says that not all social bonds are equal. The instinct is for genuine belonging, not for the mere appearance of connection. The instinct is for relationships where you are seen and valued, not for relationships where you perform a role to maintain the peace. When you fill your social world with counterfeit connections, you starve the belonging instinct while simultaneously exhausting yourself maintaining relationships that require self-suppression. The solution is not to abandon your social instinct. The solution is to be more intentional about how you satisfy it, to seek depth over breadth, to invest in the few people who truly see you rather than the many who only see the version you present, to accept that some relationships will end, and to recognize that the pain of that ending is not a sign that you made a mistake. It is a sign that you are a human being whose brain is processing a real loss. The loneliness you feel in a crowd is one of the most painful experiences a human can have. It is the activation of the belonging instinct in an environment that provides no genuine belonging. The instinct fires, reaches out for connection, and finds only surface, finds only small talk, finds only people who are also performing, also hiding, also desperate for real contact, but too afraid to initiate it. This is the social landscape of much of modern life. We are surrounded by people but connected to almost no one. We have hundreds of online friends, but no one we could call at 3 a.m. when the darkness closes in. We present curated versions of our lives to audiences of strangers, while our real selves remain completely invisible. The belonging instinct is not satisfied by this. It is tormented by it. The promise of connection is dangled constantly, but the fulfillment is withheld. And your brain, confused and frustrated, keeps seeking while receiving no nourishment. This drives the compulsive checking of social media. This drives the anxiety about how many likes your post received. This drives the feeling that you are simultaneously too visible and completely unseen. You are not addicted to attention. You are starving for genuine connection, and you are consuming empty calories that will never satisfy the hunger. The instinct theory of motivation suggests that addressing loneliness requires more than just being around people. It requires being known by people. It requires the vulnerability of showing who you really are and the risk of being rejected for it. There is no shortcut around this. Your belonging instinct will not be tricked by quantity. It demands quality. It demands the real thing. And the real thing is terrifying because it makes rejection possible. But it is also the only path to the connection your deepest self requires. There comes a moment, and it has probably already arrived for you several times in your life, when you realize that a relationship you have maintained for years is no longer serving either of you. Maybe it is a friendship based on proximity that ended the moment proximity ended, but you both keep pretending it still exists. Maybe it is a romantic relationship that became a habit rather than a choice. Maybe it is a professional relationship that requires you to suppress everything you believe to maintain the peace. The instinct to preserve the bond will fight against the instinct to preserve yourself. And in that fight, you have to decide which instinct to honor. The self-preservation instinct is older and more fundamental than the social bonding instinct. It is the instinct that keeps you alive when the group turns against you. It is the instinct that tells you to leave the burning building even if everyone else is staying. It is the instinct that knows that a relationship that requires your self-betrayal is more dangerous than isolation. This instinct is often buried under layers of socialization that taught you to be nice, to be agreeable, to not make waves, to value harmony over truth. But it is still there, and it speaks to you in the feeling of dread when you see their name on your phone, in the exhaustion that follows every interaction, in the resentment that accumulates because you keep giving more than you receive, in the fantasies about what your life would feel like if this person were no longer in it. These are not signs that you are a bad person. These are signs that your self-preservation instinct is trying to get your attention. The instinct theory of motivation gives you permission to listen to that voice. It tells you that preserving yourself is not selfish. It is the foundation on which all genuine giving is built. You cannot pour from an empty vessel. You cannot nurture others from a depleted self. And you cannot maintain authentic connection with others when you have lost connection with yourself. The most difficult conversations you will ever have are the ones where you must tell the truth about who you are to people who have known you as someone else. These conversations trigger every social threat response you possess. Your heart rate increases. Your palms sweat. Your voice may shake. Your brain floods you with reasons to postpone, to soften, to take it back, to preserve the relationship at the cost of the truth. This is not cowardice. This is your ancient social circuitry trying to protect you from exclusion. But there is something more important than avoiding social pain, and that is avoiding the slow death of living a life that is not yours. The instinct theory of motivation says that we are driven by multiple instincts that often conflict. The instinct for safety pulls toward the familiar, the comfortable, the known. The instinct for growth pulls toward the new, the challenging, the authentic. These two instincts are in constant tension, and in that tension, you make the choices that define your life. Choosing safety again and again leads to a life that feels safe but dead. Choosing growth again and again leads to a life that feels uncertain but alive. Neither choice is easy. But one choice leads toward who you could become, and the other leads toward who you are pretending to be. Every time you have the courage to speak the truth about your experience, about your needs, about your boundaries, about who you actually are, you strengthen the growth instinct and weaken the hold of the safety instinct. The fear does not go away, but your relationship to it changes. You learn that you can survive the social risk. You learn that some relationships survive the truth and become deeper because of it. You learn that the relationships that end were already dead, and you were just maintaining the corpse. And you learn that the freedom to be yourself is worth the cost of admission. Picture yourself at a family gathering, or a work function, or any of the social situations where you have learned to perform a version of yourself that is acceptable to the group. Notice how much energy it takes to maintain the performance, the monitoring of your own words, the suppression of your actual opinions, the careful calibration of your facial expressions, the laughter at jokes you do not find funny, the nodding at statements you find offensive. This is not socializing. This is acting. And acting is exhausting, even for professional actors who only do it for a few hours at a time. You have been doing it for years. No wonder you come home from these events drained, irritable, needing hours of solitude to recover. You have been spending massive amounts of energy on social performances that do nothing to satisfy your actual belonging instinct. The instinct is not fooled by the performance. It knows the difference between being accepted for who you are and being accepted for a character you are playing. The latter provides no nourishment. It only depletes. The instinct theory of motivation illuminates this exhaustion and gives it a name. It is the cost of self-suppression. It is the tax you pay on every interaction where you hide the truth. And the cumulative weight of this tax over years and decades is enormous. It contributes to burnout, to depression, to the feeling that you do not know who you are anymore. The solution is not to abandon all social situations. It is to begin experimenting with showing up more authentically, starting with low-stakes situations, starting with people who might be safer than you assume, starting with small truths before attempting the big ones. Each time you do this and survive, your brain learns that the threat was overestimated. Each time you do this and are actually accepted, your belonging instinct receives the genuine nourishment it has been starving for. This is how you rebuild a social world that feeds you rather than drains you. This is how you transform your relationships from performances into connections. Say this out loud. I will choose authenticity over acceptance. The relationships that can hold my truth are the only ones worth keeping. The ancient wisdom in your suffering is not meaningless. It is not random. It is not a sign that you are broken or defective or being punished by the universe. Your suffering is information. It is the signal your instincts send when your life is misaligned with your nature. The headache that will not go away is not just a headache. It is the accumulated tension of a body that has been braced against threat for too long. The anxiety that wakes you at 3 a.m. is not just anxiety. It is your orienting system scanning the darkness for dangers you have been ignoring during the day. The depression that makes everything feel heavy and pointless is not just depression. It is your entire organism shutting down in protest against a life that costs more than it gives. We have been taught to treat these experiences as disorders to be eliminated, as chemical imbalances to be corrected, as malfunctions in an otherwise well-designed machine. But what if they are not malfunctions? What if they are functioning exactly as evolution designed them to function? What if pain is not the problem but the messenger? What if suffering, when interpreted through the instinct theory of motivation, becomes legible? It becomes a language you can learn to read. The tightness in your chest before work, the relief when plans are canceled, the sudden surge of energy when you talk about a dream you have never pursued, the exhaustion after interacting with certain people, the inexplicable sadness that follows achievements you thought would make you happy. Each of these experiences is a data point. Each is your deeper brain communicating with the only tools it has. The conscious, verbal part of your brain may be able to rationalize anything. It can convince itself that the job is fine, the relationship is fine, the life is fine. But the older parts of your brain cannot be lied to. They process reality directly, and they report their findings through the language of sensation and emotion. Learning to read this language is one of the most important skills you can develop. It is the foundation of self-knowledge. It is the path back to motivation that does not require forcing yourself. Think about physical pain as an analogy. Physical pain is unpleasant, often intensely so, but its function is not to make you suffer. Its function is to get your attention and force you to address a problem that threatens your survival. The pain of a broken bone keeps you from using the limb and causing further damage. The pain of a burn pulls your hand away from the heat source before the damage becomes catastrophic. The pain of an infection alerts you that something is wrong before it becomes systemic. People who are born without the ability to feel pain do not live carefree lives. They live short lives, constantly injured, constantly at risk of damage they cannot detect. Pain is a gift from evolution. It is a survival mechanism of extraordinary precision, and emotional pain is no different. The shame you feel is not just suffering. It is your brain alerting you to the risk of social exclusion. The grief you feel is not just suffering. It is your brain processing a loss that requires recalibration of your attachments. The anger you feel is not just suffering. It is your brain detecting a boundary violation and preparing to defend it. The fear you feel is not just suffering. It is your brain identifying a threat and mobilizing resources to address it. When you treat these emotions as problems to be eliminated, you are treating your smoke alarm as the enemy while the fire continues to burn. The instinct theory of motivation invites you to listen to your emotional pain, not to wallow in it, not to be defined by it, but to hear what it is telling you about your life and your choices, to let it guide you toward the changes that will reduce the pain at its source rather than simply numbing the signal. This is a profound shift in how you relate to your own suffering. It transforms you from a victim of your emotions into an interpreter of them. It gives your pain meaning and purpose. It makes your suffering legible. And in that legibility, you find the first outlines of a path forward. The part of you that wants to burn it all down is not crazy. It is not self-destructive. It is the survival instinct recognizing that the current structure is unsustainable and demanding radical change. Throughout human history, there have been moments when staying put meant death and leaving meant a chance at life. The instinct to flee a burning village is the same instinct that now makes you want to quit your job with no backup plan, end a relationship with no idea what comes next, move to a new city where you know no one. Your rational mind evaluates these impulses and calls them reckless, and sometimes they are. But sometimes they are the most rational response to an irrational situation. Sometimes the only sane reaction to a life that is slowly killing you is to break free by any means necessary. The instinct theory of motivation gives context to these extreme impulses. It says that when the misalignment between your life and your nature reaches a certain threshold, the survival instinct can override all the careful, cautious, socially approved decision-making processes that normally guide your behavior. This is not a failure of rationality. This is rationality operating at a level deeper than conscious thought. This is your entire organism voting for survival over convention. The challenge is to distinguish between this legitimate survival impulse and mere escapism, between the voice of genuine instinct and the voice of avoidance. That distinction requires practice. It requires learning to sit with the impulse without immediately acting on it or suppressing it. It requires asking whether the impulse is towards something or merely away from something. It requires examining whether the impulse repeats consistently over time or flares up only in moments of stress. These are discernments, not judgments. They are the careful work of building a relationship with your own deepest wisdom, and they begin with the recognition that the impulse to burn it down might be valid. There is a kind of tired that sleep cannot fix. It is the tired of a life misaligned. It is the tired of performing a role that does not fit. It is the tired of suppressing your own nature day after day. This tired accumulates in your bones, in your cells, in the deepest structures of your brain. It is not just physical fatigue. It is existential fatigue. It is the fatigue of a creature that has been running from a predator for years and has forgotten what safety feels like. Your adrenal system was designed for acute stress, for the short burst of energy needed to escape immediate danger. It was not designed for chronic activation. It was not designed for the slow drip of stress that characterizes modern life, the deadlines that never end, the notifications that never stop, the social evaluation that never pauses, the financial precarity that never resolves, the meaninglessness that never lifts. This chronic stress is literally toxic to your brain and body. It shrinks the hippocampus. It impairs immune function. It disrupts sleep. It damages the very neural circuits you need to make good decisions and sustain motivation. The exhaustion you feel is not a personal failure. It is the predictable result of an organism being pushed beyond its evolutionary design parameters. The instinct theory of motivation says that rest is not a luxury. It is a biological necessity. And rest does not just mean sleep. It means recovery from threat. It means time in environments that signal safety to your nervous system. It means periods of complete disengagement from the stressors that activate your threat response. You cannot recover from chronic stress while remaining in the environment that causes it. You cannot heal the wound while the knife is still in your body. This is not an excuse to avoid responsibility. It is a biological fact that demands response. If you want your motivation to return, you must give your nervous system the safety it needs to shift out of survival mode. There is no other path. Listen to what you think about in the shower. Listen to what you think about on the drive to work. Listen to the thoughts that arise in the quiet moments between activities. These thoughts are not random. They are the contents of your mind that are important enough to surface when you are not actively suppressing them. The regret about the path not taken, the longing for a different kind of life, the anger at the betrayal you have never confronted, the grief for the version of yourself you abandoned, the fear of the future you are hurtling toward. the excitement about a possibility you have never allowed yourself to consider. These thoughts are your instincts speaking. They are the material that your deeper brain is trying to bring into conscious awareness. And you have been pushing them back down for years because they are inconvenient, because they threaten the life you have built, because they demand changes you are not ready to make. But the thoughts keep coming. They keep surfacing, because your instincts will not be silenced. They will keep sending the signal until the message is received. The instinct theory of motivation suggests that these recurring thoughts are not obsessions or distractions. They are guidance. They are the compass needle that points toward what your deeper self knows you need. The work is not to eliminate these thoughts. The work is to listen to them, to get curious about them, to ask what they are trying to tell you, and then to take small, concrete actions that honor the direction they point. You do not have to upend your life overnight. You just have to stop ignoring the signals. You just have to start treating your own mind as a source of wisdom rather than a problem to be managed. This is the beginning of alignment. This is the beginning of a life that feels like yours. Say this out loud. My pain carries wisdom. My exhaustion carries a message. I will stop numbing the signal and start listening to what my whole self already knows. The reclamation of your instinctual self. There is a version of you that existed before the world told you who to be. A version that was curious without permission, that moved without self-consciousness, that expressed emotion without calculation, that knew what it wanted and pursued it without shame. That version is not gone. It is buried. It is buried under years of socialization, under the weight of expectations you inherited before you were old enough to question them, under the thousand small betrayals of yourself that seemed necessary at the time and have now become habitual. The instinct theory of motivation says that the raw material of who you are is not learned. It is innate. Your temperament, your fundamental interests, your core values, your natural rhythms, your unique pattern of drives and sensitivities, these were present from the beginning. They may have been shaped by experience, reinforced or suppressed by environment, but they were not created by experience. They came with the package. They are the blueprint of your particular human animal. And reclaiming your instinctual self means excavating that blueprint from under the layers of should and supposed to that have accumulated on top of it. It means distinguishing between the voice of your own nature and the voices of parents, teachers, peers, culture that told you what your nature should be. This is not easy work. The voices of others are loud and insistent and have been with you since before you can remember. The voice of your own nature is quieter. It does not argue or demand. It simply persists. It shows up in the activities that make time disappear, in the subjects you are drawn to even when they have no practical value, in the people who make you feel like yourself, in the places where your body relaxes, in the dreams you have never quite been able to give up despite all the evidence that they are impractical. This voice is the thread you must follow. It is the guide you have been ignoring. It is the path back to a motivated life, because motivation is not something you add to yourself. It is something you reclaim. Think about what you loved when you were young, not what you were good at, not what got you approval, what you loved, the things you did for their own sake with no thought of outcome or reward. The hours spent drawing, building, exploring, asking questions, making up stories, organizing things, helping others, understanding how things work. These early passions are not trivial. They are windows into your instinctual nature. They reveal the drives that came pre-installed. The child who spent hours organizing trading cards by category was expressing an instinct for taxonomy that, if honored, might have led to satisfying work in science or analysis. The child who was always negotiating peace between friends was expressing an instinct for mediation that, if developed, might have led to fulfilling work in counseling or diplomacy. The child who took apart every device to see how it worked was expressing an instinct for mechanical understanding that, if encouraged, might have led to a career in engineering or repair. These instincts do not go away. They just get buried, and they continue to send signals through the restlessness, the boredom, the sense that something is missing, the inexplicable satisfaction when you finally get to exercise a neglected capacity. Reclaiming your instinctual self means taking these early signals seriously. It means looking back at your life for the patterns of natural engagement that have persisted despite everything. It means asking what activities have always drawn you, what kinds of problems have always interested you, what ways of contributing have always felt meaningful. The answers are there. They have been there all along. The instinct theory of motivation suggests that your deepest satisfaction will be found not in forcing yourself to be someone else, but in becoming more fully who you already are. The body remembers what the mind has forgotten. Your posture, your gait, your habitual facial expressions, the tension you carry in specific muscles, all of these are records of your instinctual life. They reveal how you have learned to protect yourself, what emotions you suppress, where you brace against the world. The shoulders that are permanently raised toward your ears are not just a physical habit. They are a chronic startle response that has never been fully discharged. The jaw that clenches in your sleep is not just a dental issue. It is the physical expression of words you have not spoken, anger you have not expressed, boundaries you have not set. The shallow breathing that barely moves your chest is not just a breathing pattern. It is a protective strategy that reduces your felt experience of emotions you have learned are not safe. Your body is a living archive of your instinctual suppression, and reclaiming your instinctual self must involve the body. It cannot be done purely through thought. You can analyze your childhood and identify your innate drives and intellectualize your patterns all you want. But until your body learns that it is safe to relax, safe to express, safe to take up space, safe to move toward what it wants, the change will be incomplete. This is why physical practices are not optional in the work of motivation. They are central. Movement, breathwork, somatic therapies, these are not just wellness trends. They are direct interventions into the instinctual system. They communicate safety to the deeper brain in the only language it fully trusts, the language of sensation, the language of the body. When you learn to breathe deeply, you are telling your nervous system that the threat has passed. When you learn to move freely, you are teaching your body that the freeze response can end. When you learn to vocalize, you are reopening the channel between internal experience and external expression. These are not metaphors. They are biological realities. And they are essential to reclaiming the motivation that has been trapped in your immobilized survival responses. Consider the simple act of standing up straight with your shoulders back and your chest open. This is not just posture. This is an instinctual signal. In the animal kingdom, a collapsed posture is a submission display. It communicates to others that you are not a threat and that you accept your low position in the hierarchy. An expanded posture is a dominance display. It communicates confidence and readiness. These signals are not cultural, they are biological. They are recognized across species. And here is the crucial insight. The signal does not just go outward, it also goes inward. Your brain reads your own posture to determine how you should feel. Stand in a collapsed, submissive posture and your cortisol rises, your testosterone drops and you feel more anxious and less confident. Stand in an expanded, confident posture and the reverse happens. This is not pseudoscience. This is the well-documented phenomenon of embodied cognition. Your body shapes your mind as much as your mind shapes your body. The instinct theory of motivation has profound implications here. It suggests that you can access motivation not just through thought but through physical action. You can change your internal state by changing your external expression. This is why the advice to act as if can actually work. It is not pretending. It is using the body-brain connection to access states that are already within you. When you move with purpose, your brain infers that you have purpose. When you breathe with calm, your brain infers that you are safe. When you stand with confidence, your brain infers that you are capable. These are not deceptions. They are activations. They are ways of accessing your own instinctual resources when your conscious mind is stuck in loops of doubt and fear. The body is a doorway, and you have been ignoring it. There is a rhythm to your energy that is uniquely yours. Some people are alert and creative in the early morning. Others find their peak focus late at night. Some work best in intense bursts followed by long recovery. Others work best in steady, sustained effort. Some need silence to think. Others need background stimulation. These patterns are not preferences you chose. They are aspects of your biological makeup. They are part of your instinctual self, and modern institutions care nothing for them. The standard workday, the standard schedule, the standard expectations of consistent output regardless of natural rhythm. These are forms of violence against individual nature. They demand that every human operate on the same clock, in the same pattern, with the same energy distribution. This is biologically absurd. It is like demanding that every animal in the zoo eat the same food and sleep at the same time. Your struggles with conventional schedules are not evidence of laziness or poor discipline. They are evidence that you have a unique chronotype, a unique energy pattern, a unique rhythm that has been denied. Reclaiming your instinctual self means learning your own rhythm and building your life around it as much as possible. It means noticing when you naturally have energy and when you naturally need rest. It means protecting your peak hours for your most important work. It means not apologizing for being useless at 3 p.m. if your body always crashes at 3 p.m. It means structuring your day to work with your biology rather than against it. This is not always fully possible within the constraints of jobs and families and obligations, but it is almost always more possible than you have allowed yourself to believe. Small adjustments can yield significant results, and the larger point is that you stop judging yourself for having a rhythm that does not match the industrial standard. Say this out loud: I am not a machine. I am a living creature with my own rhythms and needs. I will honor my nature rather than fight it. The fear that protects and the fear that imprisons. Fear is not your enemy. Fear is one of the oldest and most valuable instincts you possess. Without fear, your ancestors would have walked into the jaws of predators, eaten poisonous foods, fallen from heights, and left no descendants. Fear is a survival mechanism of extraordinary precision. It detects threat, mobilizes resources, and prepares you for action. The problem is not fear itself. The problem is that your fear system, designed for a world of immediate physical dangers, is now being triggered by threats that are abstract, chronic, and often not actually dangerous to your survival. The fear of public speaking is not a fear of death, but your body reacts as if it were. The fear of rejection is not a fear of being eaten, but your nervous system cannot tell the difference. The fear of failure is not a fear of falling from a cliff, but the same cortisol floods your bloodstream. Your fear instinct is working exactly as designed. It is trying to protect you, but the threats of the modern world are different from the threats of the ancestral environment, and your fear system has not had time to adapt. It overprotects. It treats social risk as existential risk. It treats uncertainty as danger. It treats change as threat. And so you find yourself immobilized by fears that, when examined rationally, do not justify the intensity of the response. But rationality does not help much in the moment. The fear response bypasses the rational brain. It goes straight from sensory input to the amygdala in a fraction of a second, triggering physiological changes before your conscious mind has even registered the threat. You cannot think your way out of fear. You can only understand it, respect it, and learn to move forward even when it is present. The instinct theory of motivation helps you see fear not as a weakness to eliminate, but as a signal to interpret. Some fears are valid and should be heeded. Some fears are false alarms and should be overridden. Learning to distinguish between them is the work of a lifetime. The fear that keeps you in the job you hate is not protecting you from starvation. You will not starve if you leave. You may face uncertainty, a temporary reduction in income, questions from your family, a period of instability. These are real challenges. They are not existential threats, but your brain, which evolved when unemployment meant literal starvation, cannot easily make this distinction. It treats the risk of leaving as if it were a risk of death. And so you stay, year after year. The fear is trying to protect you, but it is protecting you from the wrong thing. It is protecting you from the discomfort of change while exposing you to the slow death of a life unlived. This is where you must learn to distinguish between the fear that protects and the fear that imprisons. The fear that protects gives you information about genuine dangers and then subsides when you take appropriate action. The fear that imprisons gives you the same information on repeat, never subsides no matter what you do, and prevents you from taking the very actions that would prove the fear wrong. The fear of leaving the job is the imprisoning kind. The only way to prove to your brain that leaving will not kill you is to leave. The fear of having the difficult conversation is the imprisoning kind. The only way to prove that the conversation will not destroy you is to have it. The fear of being yourself in public is the imprisoning kind. The only way to prove that authenticity will not lead to exile is to be authentic and see what actually happens. Your fear system learns through experience, not through argument. You cannot talk your amygdala out of a threat assessment. You can only give it new experiences that update the assessment. This is the biological basis for the therapeutic principle of exposure, and it applies to every imprisoning fear you face. Consider the physical sensation of fear, the racing heart, the shallow breath, the tight chest, the trembling hands, the knot in the stomach. These sensations are not dangerous. They are uncomfortable, sometimes intensely so, but they will not hurt you. They are your body preparing for action. The heart races to pump blood to your muscles. The breath quickens to oxygenate that blood. The muscles tense in preparation to move. The stomach tightens as blood flow is diverted from digestion to survival. This is the fight or flight response, and it is a magnificent piece of biological engineering. The problem is not the response. The problem is what happens next. In the ancestral environment, the response would be followed by action. You would fight or you would flee. The physical energy would be discharged through movement. The cycle would complete. The stress hormones would be metabolized. The body would return to baseline. In the modern environment, neither fighting nor fleeing is usually appropriate. You cannot punch the boss who is belittling you. You cannot run from the presentation you must give. The energy mobilizes but has nowhere to go. It stays in your system. The cycle does not complete. The stress hormones linger. And over time, this incomplete stress response accumulates, contributing to the chronic stress conditions that plague modern life. The instinct theory of motivation offers an insight here that is both simple and profound. You can complete the stress cycle. You can give your body the discharge it needs, through physical movement, through deep breathing, through vocalization, through trembling or shaking, which is actually the body's natural mechanism for releasing trauma. When you feel fear and do nothing physical, you trap the energy inside you. When you feel fear and then move, you allow the cycle to complete. This is why exercise is so effective at reducing anxiety. It is not just about endorphins. It is about giving the mobilized energy somewhere to go. It is about completing the ancient sequence that your body is trying to complete. Fear is not the enemy. Suppressed action is the enemy, and you can take action even when the fear is still present. The voice in your head that lists all the things that could go wrong is not trying to sabotage you. It is trying to protect you. It is your brain running simulations of potential threats so that you can prepare for them. This is a useful function when applied appropriately. It becomes imprisoning when it runs unchecked, when every possible negative outcome is treated as equally likely, when the simulations become so vivid and so numerous that they prevent action entirely. The catastrophizing mind is a protective instinct run amok. It needs not to be eliminated but to be managed. It needs to be acknowledged, thanked for its service, and then gently overruled. You can say to your fear, "I see you. I understand you are trying to protect me, and I am going to move forward anyway." This is not about ignoring fear. It is about integrating it. It is about treating the fearful part of yourself not as an enemy to defeat, but as a well-meaning but overzealous guardian that needs to be reassured rather than fought. When you fight your fear, you strengthen it. Fighting tells your brain that the threat is real and requires continued vigilance. When you acknowledge your fear and move forward anyway, you teach your brain that the threat was overestimated. You update the threat assessment through experience. This is how courage is built. Not by the absence of fear, but by the repeated experience of feeling fear and acting despite it. Each time you do this, you expand the territory of what feels possible. Each time you do this, you prove to your deeper brain that you are capable of handling more than it thought. The instinct theory of motivation suggests that courage is not the suppression of a natural instinct. It is the skillful management of multiple instincts at once. The instinct for safety competing with the instinct for growth. The instinct for comfort competing with the instinct for meaning. The question is not which instinct to eliminate. The question is which instinct to privilege in this moment. Think about the last time you were afraid to do something and you did it anyway. The moment before you stepped on stage, before you hit send on the email, before you walked through the door of the party where you knew no one, before you spoke the truth that had been stuck in your throat. That moment was electric with possibility. Your entire being was activated, and then you did it, and the world did not end, and something shifted inside you, a small expansion, a new piece of evidence that you are more capable than you thought. That experience is the antidote to imprisoning fear, not thinking about the fear, not analyzing the fear, moving through the fear. Your nervous system learns from action, not from contemplation. You cannot think your way to courage. You can only act your way there. And every time you act in the presence of fear, you are not just achieving whatever the external goal was. You are rewiring your brain. You are recalibrating your threat detection system. You are teaching your amygdala that the things it flagged as deadly are actually survivable. This is the biological mechanism of growth, and it is available to you at any moment. All you have to do is choose the harder action when the easier avoidance is calling. All you have to do is feel the fear and move anyway. This is not a motivational platitude. It is a description of how the nervous system learns. It is the science of becoming brave, and it begins with recognizing that fear is not a stop sign. It is merely a signal you can choose to heed or override depending on what is actually at stake. Say this out loud. I will feel the fear and act anyway. I will let my actions teach my brain what is truly dangerous and what is merely uncomfortable. The hunger that guides you home. There is a hunger in you that has nothing to do with food. It is the hunger for a life that feels like yours. It is the hunger for work that matters. It is the hunger for love that sees you. It is the hunger for a place in the world that you did not have to pretend to earn. This hunger is not greed. It is not discontent. It is not a sign that you are ungrateful for what you have. It is the voice of your deepest instincts telling you that you are capable of more, that you are meant for more, that the current configuration of your life is not your final destination. The hunger is uncomfortable. It keeps you up at night. It makes you restless when you should be content. It ruins the simple pleasures of a life that is fine, because fine is not what your instincts are calibrated for. Your instincts are calibrated for thriving, not just surviving. They are calibrated for purpose, not just comfort. They are calibrated for contribution, not just consumption. And they will not let you settle for less than what you are capable of. The hunger is not your enemy. It is your compass. It points toward the life you have not yet built but know, in some wordless way, is possible. The instinct theory of motivation names this hunger. It says that we are born with drives that go beyond basic survival. The drive for self-actualization, the drive for meaning, the drive for transcendence. These are not luxuries for the privileged few. They are fundamental aspects of human nature that demand expression. When they are denied, we suffer in ways that cannot be fixed by more comfort, more security, more of what already is not working. The hunger will persist until it is fed. The question is whether you will listen to it or continue to numb it with the countless distractions available to you. The afternoon you spent in the bookstore when you should have been at work. The conversation that lasted until dawn while the dishes piled up and the emails went unanswered. The weekend you spent building something with your hands while the world outside demanded your attention. The hours you lost in the flow of an activity that has no practical justification. These moments are not escapes from your real life. They are glimpses of your real life. They are moments when the hunger was temporarily fed by something that actually nourished you. Notice what those moments have in common. Notice what you were doing, who you were with, what capacities you were exercising. These are clues. They are breadcrumbs on the path back to yourself. The hunger is not random. It is specific. It is a hunger for the particular kinds of experience that your particular nature requires. For some, it is a hunger for beauty. For others, a hunger for understanding. For some, a hunger for justice. For others, a hunger for creation. For some, a hunger for connection. For others, a hunger for solitude. Your hunger has a flavor. It has a texture. It can be described and understood and then intentionally fed. The instinct theory of motivation suggests that you already know what you need. The information is already inside you, encoded in your moments of deepest engagement and your moments of deepest dissatisfaction. The work is not to figure out who you are from scratch. The work is to recover what you have always known. Let me describe a simple practice. It will take you 5 minutes and it will change how you see your life if you actually do it. Take out a piece of paper. Draw a line down the middle. On the left side, write activities that give me energy. On the right side, write activities that drain my energy. Now fill in both columns with absolute honesty, not with what should give you energy, not with what you wish gave you energy, what actually gives you energy, and what actually drains you. Look at the left column. Those activities are satisfying your instincts. They are aligned with your nature. They are the things you should be building your life around. Look at the right column. Those activities are violating your instincts. They are fighting your nature. They are the things you should be eliminating, delegating, or minimizing. This exercise seems simple. It is simple, but it is also profound because most people have never actually done it. Most people have never actually looked at their life through the lens of energy rather than obligation. Most people have never actually taken seriously the data their own body is giving them about what works and what does not. The instinct theory of motivation is not complicated. It just requires you to pay attention to what your whole self is telling you, and then to have the courage to act on what you discover. The hunger you feel is not going to be satisfied by watching other people live their dreams. It is not going to be satisfied by scrolling through images of lives that look better than yours. It is not going to be satisfied by another self-help book, another motivational video, another plan you make and abandon. The hunger will only be satisfied by action, by the small, concrete steps that move you toward a life that aligns with your nature, by the phone call you have been avoiding, by the application you have been meaning to submit, by the creative work you have been keeping locked inside your head, by the boundary you need to set, by the apology you need to make, by the truth you need to tell. The hunger is not asking you to change everything overnight. It is asking you to stop ignoring it. It is asking you to take one step today. One small action that honors what you actually want. The instinct theory of motivation says that action fuels motivation, not the other way around. You do not wait until you feel motivated to act. You act and the motivation follows. The dopamine system responds to movement toward a valued goal. It does not respond to passive wishing. The hunger you feel is potential energy. It becomes kinetic energy only when you start moving. And once you start moving, the momentum builds. The fear diminishes. The path becomes clearer, but you have to start. You have to take the first step before you feel ready. You have to act your way into a new way of being. There is no other way. Say this out loud. My hunger is not a flaw. It is a guide. I will stop numbing the signal and start moving toward what I truly need. The alignment, that UNLOCKS everything alignment, is not a destination you reach and then relax into permanent bliss. It is a continuous process of adjusting your life to match your nature as your nature reveals itself to you over time. The instincts you had as a child are still there, but they have been joined by new layers of need and desire that emerged through experience. The drive for mastery that once expressed itself in building with blocks now expresses itself in building a business or a body of work or a family. The drive for connection that once expressed itself in childhood friendships now expresses itself in intimate partnership and chosen community. The drive for autonomy that once expressed itself in refusing to hold a parent's hand now expresses itself in refusing to conform to expectations that do not serve you. The expression changes. The instinct remains. And alignment means continually asking whether the shape of your life matches the shape of your nature. It means noticing when something that once fit no longer fits. It means being willing to outgrow versions of yourself that have become too small. It means treating your life as a living document rather than a fixed plan. The instinct theory of motivation is not about finding your one true purpose and then pursuing it single-mindedly until death. It is about the ongoing dialogue between your conscious self and your deeper nature. It is about the willingness to listen and adjust. It is about the humility to accept that some of what you thought you wanted was never actually yours. And it is about the courage to pursue what is yours even when it makes no sense to anyone else. The feeling of alignment is unmistakable once you have experienced it. It is a sense of rightness that goes deeper than happiness. It is the feeling of being in the right place at the right time doing the right thing. It is the absence of the internal friction that characterizes so much of modern life. When you are aligned, there is no part of you that is dragging its feet or looking for an exit. There is no voice in the back of your head whispering that this is wrong. There is just the full engagement of your entire being in the activity, or the relationship, or the environment that fits. This state is not reserved for monks and artists. It is available to anyone who takes the time to understand their own nature and the courage to build a life around it. It is available to the accountant who realizes that what they actually love is teaching and pivots to become a financial educator. It is available to the parent who stops trying to be the perfect parent according to social media standards and instead parents according to their own values and instincts. It is available to the person who leaves the city for the country or the country for the city because their nature demands a different kind of environment. Alignment is possible for everyone, but it requires something that most people are unwilling to give. It requires honesty. The kind of honesty that admits that the life you built may not be the life you need. The kind of honesty that stops pretending and starts facing reality. The kind of honesty that is willing to disappoint people who want you to stay the same. Alignment is on the other side of that honesty, and the motivation you have been chasing is on the other side of alignment. Understand what happens in your brain when you are aligned. The dopamine system, which we discussed as a desire and anticipation system, functions optimally when you are pursuing goals that match your instinctual values. Instead of the hollow, quickly fatting dopamine hits of social media and empty consumption, you get the sustained, nourishing dopamine release that comes from meaningful pursuit. The serotonin system, which regulates mood and social status, functions optimally when you are in relationships and environments where you feel genuinely respected and valued. Instead of the chronic social stress of performing for acceptance, you get the deep satisfaction of being accepted for who you are. The endorphin system, which manages pain and pleasure, functions optimally when you are physically engaged in ways that match your body's needs. Instead of the chronic pain of a sedentary, stressed existence, you get the natural high of a body that is used as it was designed to be used. The oxytocin system, which governs bonding and trust, functions optimally when you have relationships of genuine depth and safety. Instead of the loneliness of surface connections, you get the profound comfort of being truly known. Your entire neurochemistry is designed to support a life of alignment. When you are misaligned, every system is working against itself. You are trying to squeeze neurochemicals from sources that cannot provide them. You are wondering why you feel so bad when the answer is written in your biology. The instinct theory of motivation is not just a psychological framework. It is a map of your nervous system. It tells you what conditions your brain needs to function well. And it tells you that most of your struggles are not signs of illness, but signs of environmental mismatch. The moment you stop fighting yourself, you discover an energy you did not know you had. This is not a metaphor. This is a literal description of what happens when the energy that has been consumed by internal conflict is freed up for external action. The part of you that has been dragging its heels, the part that has been resisting, the part that has been generating the exhaustion and the dread and the Sunday night anxiety, that part stops fighting when you are aligned, and the energy it was consuming becomes available. This is why some people can work 16-hour days on projects they love and feel energized, while others are exhausted after 2 hours of work that means nothing to them. It is not that the first group has more willpower. It is that the first group is not spending half their energy fighting themselves. The instinct theory of motivation explains why alignment is so efficient. It is efficient because it ends the civil war inside you. It unifies your various drives behind a single direction. Instead of one part of you pulling toward growth and another part pulling toward safety, instead of one part wanting authenticity and another part wanting acceptance, instead of one part craving change and another part fearing it, alignment brings these forces into cooperation. Not perfectly, not permanently, but enough that you can move forward without dragging your own resistance behind you. This is the state that the great sages and philosophers and psychologists have described in various languages for millennia. It is the state of integrity, of wholeness, of being undivided. And it is not a gift reserved for the lucky few. It is a possibility for anyone willing to do the work of understanding their own nature and reshaping their life accordingly. You are not asking for too much. You are not being unreasonable. You are not failing at gratitude. You are a human animal with the full complement of instinctual drives that evolved over 200,000 years, and those drives demand expression. They demand a life that feels real. They demand work that matters. They demand love that sees you. They demand a place where you belong. They demand the freedom to move, to create, to explore, to rest. They demand the dignity of being treated as a person rather than a resource. These are not unreasonable demands. They are the basic requirements of human flourishing, and the fact that so many people live without them is not evidence that the demands are excessive. It is evidence that we have built a world that is profoundly misaligned with human nature. Your struggle is not a personal failure. It is a rational response to an irrational environment. And while you cannot single-handedly change the entire world, you can change your world. You can make your corner of existence more aligned with your nature. You can create microenvironments where your instincts can function as designed. You can build a life that, even if imperfect, feeds you rather than drains you. This is the work of a lifetime, and it begins with the decision to take your own nature seriously, to stop treating yourself as a problem to be solved and start treating yourself as a creature to be understood. The instinct theory of motivation gives you the framework. The rest is up to you. Say this out loud. Alignment is not a luxury. It is the foundation of a motivated life. I will build my life around what I actually need, not what I am supposed to want. The daily practice of instinctual living. This is where the philosophy meets the pavement. This is where understanding becomes action. You can read about the instinct theory of motivation for years and feel enlightened, and still find yourself paralyzed in the parking lot on a Tuesday morning. Knowledge without practice is just entertainment. If you want your life to change, you must change what you do every day. Not dramatically, not overnight, but consistently. The daily practice of instinctual living is the bridge between the theory and the transformation. It is the set of small, repeated actions that signal to your deeper brain that you are listening, that you are responding, that you are no longer at war with your own nature. These practices are not complicated. They do not require special equipment or hours of free time. They require only the willingness to show up for yourself in small ways, day after day, and to notice the difference those small ways make over time. The instinct theory of motivation is practical. It has direct implications for how you structure your mornings, how you design your environment, how you interact with other people, how you approach your work, how you handle your emotions, how you rest. It is not just a set of ideas. It is a manual for being a human animal in a world that often forgets what that means. And the manual begins with the first hour of your day. The way you wake up sets the tone for everything that follows. If you wake to a jarring alarm and immediately check your phone and flood your brain with the demands and anxieties of the outside world, you have given your day over to external forces before you have even established your own presence. Your instincts are oriented toward survival, and the first signal you are sending is that the environment is demanding and threatening. This activates your stress response before you have even gotten out of bed. The alternative is to create a morning ritual that establishes safety and sovereignty before you engage with the world. Wake without a screen. Spend the first moments of your day in silence or with gentle music. Look at natural light. Move your body. Breathe deeply. These actions signal to your nervous system that you are safe, that you have agency, that you are beginning the day from a place of centeredness rather than reactivity. This is not a luxury for people with time. This is a survival strategy for people with demanding lives. If you cannot give yourself 10 minutes in the morning, you are telling yourself that your own well-being is the very last priority, and your instincts will respond accordingly with exhaustion, resentment, and burnout. The morning ritual is the first practice of instinctual living. It is the daily declaration that you matter enough to receive the first fruits of your own attention. Throughout the day, you will be bombarded with demands on your attention. Emails, messages, notifications, requests, interruptions. Each one is a potential hijack of your instinctual drives. Each one promises something, threatens something, demands something. If you respond to every stimulus as it arrives, you are not living your life. You are merely reacting to the stimuli that other people generate. Your foraging instinct will be exploited. Your social instinct will be manipulated. Your threat detection instinct will be triggered. And you will end the day exhausted and hollow, having satisfied everyone else's agenda while your own deepest needs went unmet. The practice of instinctual living requires you to reclaim sovereignty over your attention. This means setting boundaries on when and how you engage with communication technology. It means having periods of deep, uninterrupted focus where your own priorities get your full cognitive resources. It means being willing to disappoint people who expect immediate responses. It means treating your attention as the finite, precious resource it is, not as an infinite well that can be drawn from without consequence. You do not owe the world your constant availability. You owe yourself your full presence for at least some portion of every day. Your body needs movement. Not once a week at the gym, every day. Not necessarily intense exercise, but movement that engages your full range of motion, that gets your heart rate up, that reminds your body that it is an animal designed for action. The sedentary lifestyle of modernity is a direct assault on your instinctual needs. Your brain evolved in a moving body. The neural circuits that support motivation, attention, mood, and creativity all depend on regular movement inputs. When you sit still for hours on end, those circuits degrade. Your energy drops, your thinking becomes foggy, your mood deteriorates. The practice of instinctual living requires you to integrate movement into your daily routine. A morning walk, a midday stretch break, an evening dance session in your kitchen, stairs instead of elevators, walking meetings instead of conference rooms. The specifics matter less than the consistency. Your body needs to move, and it needs to move every day. This is not optional. It is a biological requirement as fundamental as sleep. Speaking of sleep, your instincts are deeply tied to the cycle of light and dark that governed all life until very recently. The invention of artificial light, and especially of screens that emit blue light, has disrupted the circadian rhythms that regulate your sleep, your hormones, your mood, and your cognitive function. You are not immune to this disruption. If you are staring at screens until the moment you close your eyes, your brain is receiving signals that it is still daytime, and it suppresses the melatonin you need for deep, restorative sleep. The practice of instinctual living requires you to honor the natural rhythm of light and dark. This means reducing screen exposure in the evening. It means dimming lights. It means creating a wind-down ritual that signals to your brain that night is coming and rest is appropriate. It means going to bed and waking at consistent times. These are not suggestions from a wellness blog. These are the conditions your brain evolved to expect. When you violate them, you pay the price in motivation, mood, and health. Your social life is not separate from your motivational life. The people you interact with daily are either feeding your instincts or starving them. Relationships of genuine connection, where you are seen and valued, nourish your belonging instinct and provide the social safety that allows your brain to relax and function well. Relationships of superficiality, performance, and conflict do the opposite. They keep your threat detection system activated. They drain your energy. They make you feel alone even when you are surrounded by people. The practice of instinctual living requires you to be intentional about your social environment. This does not mean cutting everyone out of your life who is not perfect. It means investing more in the relationships that feed you and setting boundaries around the ones that drain you. It means prioritizing depth over breadth. It means having at least one person with whom you can be completely yourself. It means not wasting your social energy on performances that leave you empty. Your work consumes a massive portion of your waking life. If that work is misaligned with your instincts, no amount of morning routine or exercise or sleep hygiene will compensate. The practice of instinctual living requires you to honestly assess how your work aligns with your nature, not how it looks to others, not how it sounds at parties, how it actually feels to you day after day. Does your work engage your natural curiosity? Does it allow you to use your particular capacities? Does it provide enough autonomy that you feel like a person rather than a tool? Does it connect you to a purpose that matters to you? If the answer to these questions is mostly no, then the most important practice of instinctual living is to begin moving toward work that is more aligned. This does not mean quitting tomorrow. It means taking steps, exploring alternatives, building skills, saving money, having conversations. The instinct for meaningful work will not go away. You can either honor it or continue to suffer its frustration. The choice is yours every day. Say this out loud. My daily practices are the foundation of my motivated life. I will build routines that honor my nature rather than fight it. Instinctual self in relationship. The relationships you maintain are the single most powerful environmental influence on your instinctual well-being. A supportive, authentic relationship can make an otherwise misaligned life bearable. A toxic, draining relationship can make an otherwise aligned life miserable. The people closest to you have direct access to your nervous system. Their words, their expressions, their presence or absence all send signals to your deeper brain about whether you are safe, whether you are valued, whether you belong. This is not psychological theory. This is biology. Your brain processes social connection through the same neural and chemical pathways that process physical survival. The person who loves you unconditionally is providing your brain with a signal as real and as powerful as food or shelter. The person who constantly criticizes you is providing a signal as threatening as a predator. You cannot understand your motivation without understanding your relationships, because your relationships are either feeding your instincts or starving them. The instinct theory of motivation has radical implications for how you choose your people, how you relate to them, and what you are willing to tolerate in the name of connection. There is a kind of loneliness that is worse than being alone. It is the loneliness of being in a relationship where you are not seen, where your partner looks at you but does not perceive you, where you perform the role of spouse or friend or family member, but the performance is all there is. This loneliness is devastating because it activates the belonging instinct without satisfying it. The instinct fires, reaches out for connection, and encounters a wall disguised as a person. Over time, this is more damaging to your motivation and mental health than isolation. At least in isolation, the instinct eventually stops reaching out so desperately. In a hollow relationship, it is constantly activated and constantly disappointed. The practice of instinctual living in relationships means being honest about whether your closest connections are real or performative. It means risking the conversation where you say, "I do not feel seen." It means being willing to end relationships that cannot become real, even at great cost. And it means doing the work on yourself to become capable of real connection, because you cannot receive what you are not willing to offer. The instinct for autonomy is as powerful as the instinct for connection, and the tension between them is the central drama of every intimate relationship. You want to be close and you want to be free. You want to merge and you want to remain separate. This is not a problem to solve. It is a polarity to manage. Healthy relationships allow both instincts to express themselves. There is closeness that does not consume. There is independence that does not abandon. Achieving this balance requires clear communication, strong boundaries, and the willingness to tolerate the discomfort of your partner's separateness. Codependence is the collapse of autonomy into connection. Emotional distance is the collapse of connection into autonomy. Neither satisfies the full range of your instinctual needs. The practice of instinctual living in relationships means honoring both drives. It means having time together that is truly present and time apart that is truly free. It means being able to say I need space without the other person hearing I am leaving you. It means being able to say I need you without the other person hearing I am consuming you. These are skills. They can be learned, and they are essential to relationships that feed rather than drain. The instinct for status and respect operates in all your relationships, even the ones you think are beyond such concerns. You want to be valued by the people you value. You want your contributions to be recognized. You want your competence to be acknowledged. When these needs go unmet, resentment builds. You may not even consciously know why you are angry at your partner, your friend, your colleague. But somewhere in the deeper layers of your social brain, a calculation has been made. Your investment is not being matched. Your value is not being seen. Your status in the relationship is lower than you can accept. These feelings are not petty. They are the expression of a fundamental instinct for fairness and reciprocity that is observed in species from primates to birds. The practice of instinctual living in relationships means being honest about your need for respect and recognition. It means asking for what you need rather than hoping the other person will guess. It means being willing to have the uncomfortable conversation about effort and appreciation. And it means being willing to leave relationships where you are consistently undervalued, not out of anger but out of respect for your own instinctual needs. Conflict in relationships is inevitable. The instinctual response to conflict is fight, flight, or freeze. Your heart races, your breathing changes, your thinking narrows. In this state, you are not capable of the nuanced, empathetic communication that healthy conflict resolution requires. The practice of instinctual living means learning to recognize when your threat response has been activated and developing the capacity to regulate it before you engage. This might mean taking a break from the conversation. It might mean deep breathing. It might mean physically moving to discharge the mobilized energy. It means not saying the thing that will wound while your amygdala is in control. It means coming back to the conversation when your prefrontal cortex is back online and you can access your full intelligence and empathy. This is not weakness. This is skillful management of your own biology, and it transforms relationships from battlegrounds into laboratories for growth. Say this out loud. I deserve relationships that see me, value me, and honor my autonomy. I will stop settling for the appearance of connection when I need the real thing. The legacy of your instincts. You are the product of an unbroken chain of survival that stretches back 200,000 years. Every single one of your direct ancestors lived long enough to reproduce. Every single one survived predators, famines, plagues, wars, and the countless other threats that ended so many other lines. The instincts that live in you are the instincts that kept them alive. They are battle-tested. They are ancient, they are wise, and they have been entrusted to you. You carry the accumulated evolutionary wisdom of your species in the architecture of your brain and body. This is not mysticism. This is biology. The drives you feel, the fears you experience, the hungers that keep you restless, these are not random malfunctions. They are the legacy of your ancestors, encoded in your cells, speaking to you in the only language they have. The instinct theory of motivation is ultimately about honoring that legacy. It is about recognizing that you are not a blank slate upon which anything can be written. You are a specific kind of creature with specific needs and specific capacities. And your task, your sacred task, is to become the fullest expression of that creature that you are capable of becoming. Not what someone else wanted you to become. Not what the culture told you was valuable. What you, specifically, uniquely, are meant to be. Think about what you will leave behind. Not in terms of money or possessions. In terms of example, what will the people who knew you say about how you lived? Will they say you were brave enough to be yourself? Will they say you listened to your own voice rather than the crowd? Will they say you honored the gift of your particular nature? Will they say you contributed something that only you could contribute because only you had your particular combination of drives and talents and perspectives? The legacy of your instincts is not just about your own satisfaction. It is about what you bring to the world that no one else can bring, Every human being has a unique signature of instinctual drives, a unique pattern of what energizes them, what they notice, what they care about, what they are capable of doing with excellence. When you suppress that uniqueness to fit in, to be safe, to meet expectations, you do not just harm yourself, you deprive the rest of us of what you were meant to offer. The world needs people who are fully alive. The world needs people who are operating from their deepest nature rather than from their conditioned responses. The world needs you to be who you actually are. The instinct theory of motivation brings you back to something simple and profound. You already know what you need. You already know what matters to you. You already know what direction you should be heading. The information is inside you. It has always been inside you. Your task is not to find it as if it were lost. Your task is to stop ignoring it, to stop overriding it, to stop treating the voice of your own nature as a distraction from the important business of meeting external expectations. The voice is quiet. It does not shout. It does not argue. It simply persists. It is the thing that makes you feel alive when you are doing certain activities and dead when you are doing others. It is the thing that makes certain people feel like home and others feel like work. It is the thing that makes certain places calm your nervous system and others activate it. This voice is your instinctual self, and it is the most reliable guide you will ever have to a life that is worth living. You are still in the car. The engine is still running. The dashboard clock is still ticking. The office building is still there, all glass and steel, and people walking in with their coffee cups and their lanyards and their faces that look the way you feel. The choice is still before you. Not necessarily the choice to quit your job this morning, but the choice to start listening. The choice to stop treating your paralysis as a problem and start treating it as a signal. The choice to begin the long, slow, deeply worthwhile work of aligning your life with your nature. The instinct theory of motivation does not give you easy answers. It does not tell you exactly what to do. It gives you something better. It gives you a framework for understanding yourself. It gives you permission to take your own nature seriously. It gives you the knowledge that your struggles are not failures of character but signals of misalignment. And it gives you the direction you need to start moving. The rest is the work. The rest is the daily practice of listening and adjusting. The rest is the courage to act on what you hear. The rest is your life, waiting for you to finally claim it, the hand that would not move from the steering wheel. Feel it now. Feel the tension in your fingers. Feel the tightness in your forearm. Feel the resistance that your whole body is offering to the direction you have been forcing. This resistance is not your enemy. It is your ally. It is the part of you that knows you are meant for something different. Thank it, acknowledge it, and then make a choice. Not necessarily to turn the key and drive away, but to start the journey, to begin the inquiry, to take one step today toward a life that fits. The instinct theory of motivation says that action fuels motivation, not the other way around. Do not wait to feel ready. Do not wait for the fear to disappear. Do not wait for permission that will never come from outside you. Take one action today that honors what your whole self already knows. One phone call, one honest conversation. 1 hour spent on the thing that makes you feel alive. One boundary set, one truth told, one step, however small, however imperfect, take it, and then take another one tomorrow. This is how lives change. This is how alignment is built. This is how motivation returns, not through force, through honoring, not through fighting yourself, through working with yourself, not through becoming someone else, through becoming more fully who you already are. You are still in the car, but something has shifted. You are no longer just paralyzed. You are paying attention. You are listening. You are beginning to understand. The instinct theory of motivation has given you a new lens, a new language, a new relationship with the forces that move you. What you do with that understanding is your choice. No one can make it for you. No one can walk your path, but you do not have to see the whole path. You only have to see the next step. And the next step is always available. The next step is always possible. The next step is waiting for you now. Say this out loud. I am the inheritor of 200,000 years of survival wisdom. My instincts are not my enemy. They are my guide. I will listen. I will learn. I will act. And I will become the person I was born to be.